Hey there, my name is Kelly Dale and I am with Off the Beaten Path, which is located in Forest City, North Carolina. Today, I'm in the back of our shop having to film this because I can't find another quiet place. This is where Sammy does all his work and does all the shipping, so please just don't mind these fabulous beads behind me. But for today, I'm going to show you how to make what I call an expanding peyote stitch bracelet. Now, this is a kind of like, it's a mix between Cellini spiral and Dutch spiral, because you're going to be doing the peyote stitch basically just like you would in a Cellini spiral, but we're going to have some expanding, what I call bridges, and you'll understand it more when we work, that kind of bump it up more into Dutch spiral. So basically for the project today, what I will be using is 100 3mm. These can be Bicone, fire polish beads, pearls, whatever you want to use. It just needs to be a 3mm. You're going to need approximately 98 color A8 seed beads. You are going to need 98 another color of a size 8 seed bead. You're going to need about 102 size 15 seed beads. I'm going to need 98 peanut beads, 2 8mm rounds, 14 grams of a size 11 seed bead. So if it's a regular long size tube, you're going to need about half the tube. You're going to need a clasp of your choice, a size 12 beading needle. You can use a 10 or a 12. And then I'm going to be using some 10 or 12 size fire line. Now, I'm going to, for me personally, I'm going to use 12-pound wildfire today to do the project with, but you can use 10-pound fire line, you can use 12-pound fire line, you can use the wildfire, whatever you want to use. It just helps me keep this piece nice and stiff the way I like to work it. So it's going to actually be a bracelet, but by the time we get done and you get the bracelet completed, finished, done, whatever, I'm going to then show you how you can take this bracelet and convert it into a necklace. Me personally, I like to wear stuff that can be convertible. Like if it's a wrap bracelet, I'd like to be able to wear it as a necklace too. So same thing here, because just being on a time restraint now that I'm a new mom, it's hard to sit down and make complete sets. But if you have the time, then it would be great if you could sit and just make this longer and make it into a necklace. So go ahead and you get your materials together, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you on my mat how I've got my beads laid out and exactly what bead is going to be used for what. So go ahead and get that together and we'll get started. Alright, since I'm using a thicker fire line, it's going to be a little bit harder to get it through because you're using a round thread that has to go into an oval eye of your needle. So what I do to help me is I take a pair of flat nose pliers, no ridges on the inside, and I'm going to take and I'm going to flatten out the end of this line. Sorry guys, couldn't see there. I'm going to take and I'm going to flatten that out so that it'll help me get the needle threaded easier. I'm going to make sure those pliers are out of my way. And now the needle will thread right through, and I can go ahead and pull this through. And I'm starting and I'm using a 3 yards of fire line. You're probably going to use about 8 total yards on the project. So just start out with what you feel most comfortable with. Alright, now for the project. This is one sample of the project here. This is using beautiful fall colors. And then here's another sample using metallic purples and blues and such. Your 8mm rounds are going to be used here on the ends. So I would just pick a color that would complement those. And then you can see here I've used a crystal copper with a copper colored clasp. Alright, so where your colors are going to be at. And you'll see it more when we actually start, but I just wanted to kind of give you a heads up to where your colors will be. So I'm going to start right here, this little green bead right here next to my peanut, and I'm going to get me another needle so I can point to it. Okay, so this bead right here, that's a size 8 seed bead. That's my color A. The next bead is a peanut bead. That's my color B. Color C, oh, nope, I'm going around this way. Color C are my size 11 seed beads. Okay, so I've got an 11, a 15, which is going to be my color D, and an 11. And then I have my color E8, my 3mm, and then my 11s. So you'll see, I'll pick them up here in a minute and you'll be able to see kind of how it works. But you can see I start out with small bridges, and as the spiral goes, the bridges get bigger until they kind of even out, and then as we get to the other end, they decrease so that they go back smaller. So for my colors, I'm going to see if I can do this here a little easy so you can see. I have my bead mat labeled. A is an 8, B is my peanut, C is my 11, D is my 15, E is my second color of my size 8, and F is my 3mm round that I'm going to be using. So that'll give you an idea about the colors. Now, I'm going to go ahead and get started. So to get started, you're going to thread your needle and you're going to string on 1A. Okay, so 1A. Sorry people. 1A. 2B. 2C. 2D. That's my 15s. 2C, which are my 11s. 2E, which are my 8s. And 1F, which is a 3mm. And 2 C's, which are my 8s. So again, I have 1A, 2B, 2C, 2D, 2C, 2E, 1F, and 2C. So this is what I've got. I'm going to let these beads fall, and I'm going to leave about a 12-inch tail so that I can go back and add my clasp at the end. So make sure you leave that tail. And I'm going to go through these beads once more. If you're using a thinner fire line, you can go through it once more, or you can tie these into a circle. And you just have to be careful not to get the thread caught in any seed bead when you make the circle. Okay, so I have it tied into the circle, and I'm going to go through the A right next to the knot. So A is my size 8 seed bead. So I'm going to go right through the A. Pull the thread. I'm going to pick up 1A. Well, so I've got my 1A. I'm going to skip 1B, so that's my first peanut, and go to the next B, which is the second peanut. Pick up 1B, which is my peanut. Skip 1C and go through the next C. pick up one C, skip one D, which is my 15, and go through the next D, which is my second 15. So if you've caught on already, which I know some of you have, whatever color you're coming out of, or whatever bead you're coming out of, is the bead that you're going to pick up. So I'm coming out of a D, which is my 15. So I'm going to pick up one D. I'm going to skip one C and go through the next C. I'm coming out of a C, so I'm going to pick up one C. I'm going to skip one E and go through the next E. Now, here's where the pattern changes just a little. I'm coming out of an E, so I'm going to pick up one E, one F, and two C's. So instead of just picking up the one bead like I have all the way around, now I'm going to pick up an E, an F, and two C's. And I'm going to come around and I'm going to go through the A that's sticking up. So that's that one here, not the first one, but the second one. And I'm going to pull that through. So that when you pull, you can see now what's starting. I'm coming out of an A, so I'm going to pick up an A, and I'm going to go through the B that's sticking up, which is going to be this one here. I'm coming out of a B, so I'm going to pick up one B, and I'm going to go through the C that's sticking up. Coming out of a C, so I'm going to pick up one C, and I'm going to go through my D that's sticking up, which is my 15. So I'm coming out of a 15, which is my D, so I'm going to pick up one D, and I'm going to go through the C that's sticking up, I'm coming out of the C, so I'm going to pick up a C and go through the E that's sticking up, which is this one right here. Alright, so now I'm coming out of that E size 8. The first two rows have 2 11s. So now the next two rows are going to have 3 11s. So that means I'm going to pick up one E, one F, and 3 11s, which are my C's. So I'm going to have an E, an F, and 3 C's. And I'm going to come over here to the A that's sticking up, and I'm going to go right through that A. So you can see the spiral that's starting there. So I'm going to pick up the A because I'm coming out of the A, and I'm going to go through the B that's sticking up. Coming out of a B, so I'm going to pick up a B, go through the C that's sticking up, coming out of a C, so I'm going to pick up one C, and I'm going to go through the little D that's sticking up there. Coming out of a D, so I'm going to pick up my D, go through the C that's sticking up, and I'm coming out of a C, so I'm going to pick up a C and go through the E. Alright, first two rows had 2 11s. The third row had 3 11s. So I've got to continue and do one more row with 3 11s. So I'm going to have an E, an F, and 3 11s. And I'm going to go through the A that's sticking up. So now you can really tell that my spiral is starting. So again, the first 2 rows of my bridges had 2 11s. The next 2 rows had 3 11s. So my next 2 rows are going to have 4 11s. So when I come back around to my bridge, I'll be picking up an E, an F, and 4 11s. So go ahead and do those 2 rows and I'll be right back with you. Okay, so I finished the next 2 rows. So I have 2 rows with 2, 2 bridges or 2 rows with 3, 2 bridges or 2 rows with 4. So you're going to continue working until you have 2 rows with 5, 2 rows with 6, 2 rows with 7, 2 with 8, 2 with 9, and the rest of your rows are going to be 10. So what that means is you're just going to continue, and then once you get to that row 10, you will continue doing the rows with 10 until you get to within 2 inches of the bracelet. So I'm going to get to this 10th row so that you can see what it looks like, and then we'll go from there. So I just finished my first row of 10. And you can see that the spiral is going really good now. So I'm just going to continue adding my row of 10 all the way around until I get it to within 2 inches of the length that I need, because I'm going to need this much to decrease, and this is going to take up about 1 inch. So go ahead and keep going, and when I get to the length, I'll show you how to do the decrease. Okay. So I have got this much of my bracelet completed, and I am to the point to where I can start to decrease on the piece now. And the way I know this is I told you to leave 2 inches because you're going to need 1 inch to add your decrease. Now also, I've done this enough times now to know that 98 3mm is what I need for the piece. So I'll go ahead and lay those 98 out, and I'll know at what point I get to the decrease. And this is how. When you get ready to decrease, you're basically going to do the same thing that I showed you a few minutes ago, how we increased. You're going to do that to decrease. So once I get to my length that I want, less than 2 inches, I'm going to go 2 rows with 9 C's on my bridge, and then 2 rows with 8, 2 rows with 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, all the way till I get down to my 2 rows with a 2. So you're going to need 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. You're going to need 16 beads to be able to finish out your piece. So what I did, I counted out 98 3mm to start with. I took out 16 and set those to the side at the very beginning, so that way I'll know exactly when I get to the point where I need to decrease. Now, the only way you're going to know this is like where I have my exact measurements. If you have a 7-inch wrist, if you need one bigger or smaller, you're just going to have to kind of subtract and play. But like I said, you're going to need to leave 2 inches for your length. An inch to finish, and then an inch for your clasp, the way we put that on. So I'm to that point now, so I'm going to do the decrease, and as you do your decrease, you'll notice that the tube is getting smaller to the end, and that's exactly what you want it to do. You want it to look exactly like how we started in the beginning. And so you want to go ahead and do your decrease, and then I'll show you how to finish up the tube and put your clasp on. So I have the decrease done, and I have the bracelet finished except for my ends. As you can see, as I did the decrease, the tube got smaller, as yours should have had. Now, on my very last row here, I'm not going to add any beads. We want to pull this actually together more because the other side is. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go through the beads that are sticking up. I'm not going to add anything. I'm just going to go through all of my beads that are sticking up, pulling it nice and tight. So that way it'll pull it all in together and give the tube a good tightness, just like you have in the beginning. Now you're ready to add your clasp. So what I'm using is, you want an 8mm bead. I'm using a little 8mm twist bead. So you're going to need that, and you're going to need a clasp. I'm using a fairly large clasp for this just because I like this clasp with this project. So I'm going to stitch down through the piece to come out of the 7th size 8 E in the piece. So I'll count down from the top. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I want to be coming out of this bead right here. So I'm just going to stitch through my beads to kind of get there. You want to stitch through so that your thread does not show. So I'm coming out of the 7th E. I'm going to take my needle and I'm going to stick it through the tube, and I want my needle to come out of the center here at the top. Just want it to come out of that opening. I will pick up my 8, and then just because I'm going to use my 8s or my A's, my color A's, you can use your E's or your A's, whichever one, but I'm going to pick up 3 A's, part of my clasp, and 3 A's. I'm going to take the needle and come back down through the 8mm, through the center of the tube, and then back down to an opening. So see, my needle is here. And I'm going to pull that thread so that my piece looks like this. I'll go through that 7th E again, back through the tube, up through the 8. And this is the hard part because you just want to make sure that you don't get any threads showing around your bead here. Okay, there we go. So basically what you're doing is you're tacking your clasps in. I'm going to go down through the 8 again, and I'm going to choose a different bead to go through. It can be any bead as long as you can get your needle stuck through the tube and then through the bead. So this time I'll go through a peanut. I try to go through a bead or 2 on each side, so that way I know that it's tacked evenly through the piece. So when you finish, it should look just like this. You shouldn't see a space in between your bead and the loop here. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down through and tie this thread off. And then I'm going to do the same thing on this side. I'm going to tie the, put my needle on this end, come out of the 7th E, and then put the other part of the clasp on just like I did this side. And again, all we did was tack the bead to various beads here along the inside of the tube. So I now have both ends completed, and I have my finished bracelet. But now I did tell you that I would show you how you can actually make it into a necklace. So what I've done is I have taken a regular piece of beading wire, and you need the exact same clasp that you used on the bracelet. I have threaded on enough beads to go around the back of the necklace for my length. So what I'm going to do now is put the piece on the other side, or the end on my other side, I should say. So I'm going to use one of those cyclone or tornado crimps like I talked about in the newsletter a couple of weeks ago. So I'm going to thread that one on. I'm going to thread on a wire protector. So I'm going to go up one side and down the other. And then once I do that, I'm going to put on the other part of my clasp, slide it up into the wire protector here, and then take the thread or the beading wire and go back down through the crimp. Now I'm also going to go down through a bead and kind of pull that nice and tight. And with the cyclone crimp, you don't have to crimp it, you just have to flatten it. So I'm using a pair of needle nose or flat nose pliers to flatten that out. And then I'm going to take my cutters and cut that excess piece of wire so that the round toggle part on the beaded necklace will hook into the bar on the bracelet, and then the bar on the other side of the bracelet will go into the ring here, so that you now have a completed necklace that you can wear. So you've got your bracelet, or you can add the beadwork like this to do a necklace. So I hope you guys enjoyed learning how to make this expanding peyote stitch bracelet. We do have the 3 color kits that I showed you earlier. We do have all 3 colors available in our Etsy store or on our website. And again, that was a fall color, a purple and bronze with some blue, or the pewter and mint green color that I did in today's sample. But all 3 of the kits are available on Etsy or our website until we sell out. And also the pattern, if you want a step-by-step pattern for this, the pattern is on our Etsy site and our website, offthebeadedpathbeadstore.com. So again, I hope you guys enjoyed, and we'll see you next week for another great video. Bye-bye!